Star Trek Strange New Worlds, Kyle. Are you excited? Are you happy? Are you glad to finally see Star Trek back?
I don't think it's back, to be honest. If it's Kurtzman Trek, it doesn't count.
I think it's back, Kyle. Like, the sets are nice and bright, there's lights everywhere. We had a proper Star Trek adventure today where they sang to a rock and the rock responded in kind. What is Star Trek if not singing to stone?
It's something. You know what I think it is? I think this show is the epitome of... It's trying to pretend it's like a crappy facade, right? Like somebody's made a cheap imitation and is like, I'm a Star Trek show. Look at me. We have questions we pose, and we're going to be like, let the audience decide, and then we'll answer those questions for them. But then we'll try to double back real quick and be like, but maybe it was a question after all. It's like, oh. And the costume designs are terrible. The hairdo, the actors and actresses they use for the show are bad. The sets are awful. Like, the ship is terrible. The ship's internals, like, they have to have the lights so bright that it's just this blindingness. It's like, good God, must every light be shined on everything? Like, in today's episode of Sadness, we had an asteroid scene, right? They go into spacesuits. The lights shine on their face inside their helmets because, why don't we add more goddamn lights? And then the entire asteroid glows, light after light after light. It's just a bright show. I think we need to wear sunglasses next time we watch this.
This cruelty. I do not understand it.
It is quite something.
From the perspective of somebody who knows nothing about Star Trek, beyond the fact that, it's apparently a universe in which the Democrats decided to wipe out certain races in the eugenics war at some point in the early 2000s. Why isn't this Star Trek, Kyle? It's got flashing lights. It's got aliens. Today we saved a planet full of little African nomad people things living in mud huts, and we saved them from a singing rock, Kyle. Isn't this wonderful? The rock, it sang to them in harmonious convergence or something.
It's like, we can communicate to it through sound. And it's like, okay, you just sing to it. And then they have like a singing sequence. And it's like, okay, you can use musical notes to communicate with it. That's fine. But they drag out the singing aspect of it for so long, like, and then they're like, come on, Spock, sing along. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll join in. And it's like, stop. Just stop. Just stop doing that. Don't. Like, we get it. It communicates with musical notes. Like, I'm not even opposed to that, because, okay, it's like, yeah, that uses mathematics to communicate. All right, that's not it's not the craziest thing ever. But, like, and it's like, no, we just need to sing to the asteroid. And don't worry, the asteroid will listen and understand us.
See...
Quite cancerous.
The singing did drag on for far too long, and he was quite cringe in his own right. But, see, what you could have done is simply have them communicate via certain noises or instruments or diddly-doo-dahs. I mean, they've all got these magic little machine boxer-majiggamas who are like universal translators and shit. Surely the universal translator would be able to translate a language that is apparently universal in that it is music? How does the universal translator work, Kyle? Does it suddenly stop functioning when the plot demands it?
Yeah, you bring up an excellent question. That should, in theory, be like, okay, it's a universal translator. Sure, it might have some difficulty initially establishing contact, but once it's figured out, like, okay, it communicates via mathematics, using musical notes, all right, that's a basis to work for. In fact, that's a huge step forward, because you understand what it's doing. But no, it doesn't work, because we need Mary Sue to figure it out. Oh, God.
I mean, see, there's the problem. Excuse me. Because here's the thing, right? They figure out how to awaken the rock, because the rock has written the instructions to sing it its wake-up lullaby on an enormous egg in the room. These are notes, like they are apparently so easily discernible by the naked human eye that Uhura, Ihu?
Uhura.
Uhura.
Keep changing the name.
Can apparently discern this with the naked eye. Like, she can just look at this and go, aha, I need to go, ah. Okay, so it's got to be pretty simple, right? Surely the tricorder or whatever fancy thingamajigs they're carrying around should be able to do the same thing. In fact, they even show us her iPad with all of the information on it. Like, this should be a simple computer problem. Again, as Spock points out, if music is a universal language in that it is based in mathematics, and you've got the Rosetta Stone right in front of you, this should be easily translatable. The only reason, apparently, why we had to do all of this nonsense is so that Uhura would have a thing to do.
Yeah, it very much felt that way, because this episode is tailored in a way that, okay, this is the second episode in the series. It's very much going like, this is Uhura's episode. We're trying to, introduce the character, but I think the way they do it, because she's the comms officer, and it's like, okay, it should be a communications episode, which, all this crap checks out. The problem is the way they handle it is in the dumbest way possible. Like, they send the comms, like, they send her on an expedition. Now, to be fair, I don't think she's gotten her proper station yet, because I'm a little bit new to the show.
Well,
I only watched the recap for episode 1, so...
They introduced her as a prodigy, where there's like, oh my god, Uhura, you're amazing at all kinds of things. And then they did a whole welcoming part in the beginning of the episode, where they're like, man, you're so smart, and you speak like 72 languages, and actually 74, and stuff like that. The entire episode is built around introducing this character to us. And that's kind of the problem, because she's introduced in a very ham-fisted way that doesn't actually make sense retrospectively.
It also just doesn't really establish her as very interesting. Like, what do we really learn? She speaks lots of languages. She's Kenyan. She's lost some family due to an accident. What about her as a person did we establish?
Well, that she doesn't want to be in Starfleet. She said that quite openly.
That's great. She's like, I don't like Starfleet, actually. It's like, okay, then why are you here?
Well, she didn't have a whole lot of choice, because she felt she didn't fit anywhere else. So, Starfleet is a pretty amateurish organization by and large. It's pretty easy to gain entrance into it, as she demonstrates. She joined up on a whim and was like, yeah, I'm an alien language specialist. And they were like, cool.
Yeah, okay, so, like, you're joking, but, like, that actually it's striking at some serious
I'm not joking,
point.
That's the story.
No, that's the story, that is the story. The way they're treating Starfleet and the Starfleet Academy, which is one of the most prestigious institutions in humanity in this universe, like, getting in is a huge honor for anyone. Like, it's a huge deal. Like, you're getting into Starfleet, like, you're gonna be, off on the frontier, protecting humanity's interests in the Federation and stuff like that. That's a pretty big deal in this universe and in this society. And she's like, I just kind of wanted to, like, I didn't know what else to do, so I just did it, and I sort of, like, barely paid attention and, like, just totally got through it. It's like, it's painful, because that's very much Mary Sue, because it's an institution that, like, so many people apply to join, and very, very few can actually make it through Starfleet Academy, or even get in to begin with.
I was also really not fond of the fact that it was just her intuiting this, kinda. Because my impression of Star Trek is often that you have a problem, and then you speak gobbledygook at one another, and they go, that might just work. Then you do the gobbledygook. In this case, she just read the eggs things and went like, you sing to it, and then that was the thing. I mean, there was nothing scientific about this. They didn't communicate it through their tricorders, their tech, or anything like that. There was no, like, lengthy clue or gathering phase. It was just, well, there you go. And the preceding guy, who's supposed to be the expert, just goes like, glowy thing, touch!
Yep. And then just gets totally taken out of that scene. Yeah, like, I mean, you are kind of right. Like, that is the stereotype with the pseudoscience mumbo-jumbo babble and the boring episodes, they do that. But generally, Star Trek is a mixture of, like, you got different alien species with different ideologies, and they're trying to figure out how they can either try to get around the issue diplomatically, and then sometimes it ends up being through conflict. Not always does it always work out. Or they try to figure out, a sort of scientific way to solve an issue. Like there's generally lots of problem solving and sort of like mystery or detective work in Star Trek, where they're figuring things out, figuring out who's behind what, and in this system, what are the politics going on here. Like there's a lot of stuff at play here. In this episode, it's crazy religious zealots protect rock that smack into planet, but rock is not smart and can be influenced. Or is it? Asks the show.
Well,
the way they do that is such a roundabout way of doing it too.
Rock is having a wander through the galaxy, as rocks do, and the rock is the sacred pet property thing of a species of space zealots who have named the rock Hakuna Matata or something along those lines.
Yeah, we'll just go with that. I know what it is because I wrote it down, but that's good. I like that better.
And
Hakuna Matata.
Yes, Hakuna Matata is known to wander across the galaxy. Hakuna Matata is one of a select few such rocks that bring either life or destruction. And the Zealots, who have incredibly advanced technology and can beat the shit out of the tiny little Federation starship with no issues and apparently no diplomatic recourses or consequences or anything, are like, well, you didn't see us previously because I guess you got lazy and didn't scan the area or something. And they shoot the Enterprise and then appear like 5 feet in front of it, like, haha, look at us, we're here.
We're intimidating you. You're violating our sacred, the sacred rock.
Yes. You are touching a Hakuna Matata in improper places.
You didn't ask for permission to touch Hakuna Matata. And they're like, what?
And the entire thing is too, he's like, Hakuna Matata will either kill that planet or let it live if Hakuna Matata chooses. But you may not touch Hakuna Matata. And it turns out that Hakuna Matata's entire plan was to make Spock drive his little space Volkswagen through it, and therefore make it dodge the planet. Because Hakuna Matata didn't want to kill all of the little space Africans in their mud huts. He wanted to inseminate their planet with his water and make it livable again. That's what he wanted, but, well, he might be a magic space rock that can literally see the future, but he can't steer himself, you see. That's a little bit beyond his capabilities.
His powers are limited, you see.
Hakuna Matata works in mysterious ways, as it turns out.
He brought the rains down in Africa, so to speak.
He literally did. He literally did.
He did. Oh, man. The way, if you look at it from a distance, you can kind of see the elements of a Star Trek episode, but it's all in the execution of how they do it, how they portray the other perspective of the other faction, the Zealots, and it's very one-sided. Now, you get that occasionally with innuendos to communism in the old ones, with you have the Borg and stuff, and they're portrayed as very negative, as that collective force versus individualism. But, this here felt kind of just dry. It feels very much what we'd call a shitty filler episode, of a sci-fi show. It didn't really have any value other than hey, introduce Uhura. Saving the little African people on the desert planet is a secondary, story goal. The asteroid is just a plot device to introduce Uhura with and show off her talent and skills. And it feels just lazy when they do that in shows. Because now it just feels like this episode was just, it didn't really have a lot of weight, did it? Or gravity to the whole story. Even Uhura's character and her contributions in this episode are kind of forgettable, honestly. She sang and figured out some musical notes. That was her shining moment in this episode. And that's kind of sad.
Now, what I did like, though, is the way that Hakuna Matata worked with Captain Piker. Piker.
Yep, Piker.
There you go. There's so many of them. None of them are good.
As you were saying.
I was waiting for you to argue, and then I go like, should we watch Picard next? And I was like, no. Anywho.
One terrible thing at a time.
Piker, and this is a bit of a cool little continuation as well, because Piker was in the previous Star Wars things, and Piker got singed when he hung around inside one of their massive air fryer thingies, and he turned into this mumbling zombie thingy in a fancy-ass wheelchair. And this is the future that this Piker has actually seen. So he's like, yes, in 10 years, I am going to turn into a rotisserie chicken. And he's questioning whether or not this is avoidable or not. Now, in reality, yes, it's incredibly easily avoidable because you know exactly what's going to kill you. You know exactly when and you know exactly where. If you wish to avoid this, simply don't go there. And he's like, but the people, they will die if I do not save them. Okay, well, you say to the computer, like, computer, bring up all available information on these individuals. And the computer goes, fine, tracking Facebook profile. There you go. With pictures and everything, which is like, this is a pedophile's dream scenario right here, as just the children pop up on screen, but I'm sure the Federation is... See, you have no rights to privacy in the Federation, but this is fine. It's the future, okay?
You actually raise an interesting thing here, because in this show they demonstrate that individual liberty being gone by doing that.
Yes.
Because in the older shows, the big thing about the Federation isn't like it's a collective or a communist thing, though communists have tried to hijack Star Trek, by the way. It's very much an individualist society. It's you can pursue your own ambitions and dreams in that sort of idealistic sense. It's a utopia in its own way.
See, that's a wider topic as well, but to finish up the thought, the point here is, he knows these people's name, he can literally just ask the computer to deliver their full profile information, pictures, biometrics, yada 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 yada. He could literally just call them up and go like, okay, so, I know this is gonna sound a little bit weird, but I need you to not come into work 10 years from now on, and I can connect you over to Starfleet Admiral people to, you know, explain that you shouldn't show up for work too, so could you just not? And this entire problem would be solved, because in the previous episode, we saw him actually talk to the top brass of Starfleet. He could explain to them what's going on. It seems to be a commonly accepted phenomenon. Nobody is questioning this. It's super easy to solve, but if we just ignore all of that, then the whole thing with the asteroid is, okay, can you truly change your fate? Yes, it would be incredibly easy, but movie idiocy aside, The Rock knew that Spock would come and touch it in magical places so that it could veer off course, because it shattered off a piece of ice which looked exactly like its piece of ice.
Because, of course.
Dumb, but there you go. Which is literally
somehow that's supposed to get related, yeah.
And also, why did The Rock do that? Is The Rock like, so, humans, I know you're gonna do this, but I need to make you understand that I am Space God, okay? So, I'm gonna give you a clue, right? Okay.
Yeah, it's very weird, and it's also not quite established what civilization built this, because there are precursor civilizations that came before that seeded worlds, like humans and Vulcans. The reasons why Klingons and Cardassians and those four are similar in the way they look and can kind of interbreed is because they were seeded by a race that came before.
Well, we don't even know if the rock is made, or if the rock is simply rock. It exists because it is rock.
I have a feeling that this rock thing is it happens in this episode, and the greater context of the story, it never appears again.
Probably. It very much so struck me as a throwaway point where it would be like, hey, can future truly be changed? But what if you changing the future will cause the future to come about? It's very much so baby's first future changey question.
Yeah, I think you nailed it on the head with that one, because the way the entire episode is, introduce Uhura and discuss Piker's fate thing. And because Piker's fate is going to be a huge point of the story, because he's got to figure out whether or not to accept his fate or reject it. That's his character arc. That has been sort of foreshadowed based on what we know so far. And that was very much a huge reference to his decisions, like, well, no matter how hard I try, can I actually change fate? And the show is probably going to drag that question out and hopefully go into greater depths to explore it than they did today. Because today was pretty shallow. Very much baby's first steps, as you said.
Yeah, see, that's the problem. The whole, can you change fate, or will you trying to change fate simply make the fate come about? Again, it's a plot point that has been done a million times, and there's no satisfactory resolution to that plot point, because the answer is always the same. Whatever the plot demands. Because there is never an internal logic in this. Like, there's no overriding reason or rationale. It's simply just, oh, well, in this universe, it works out like this. Okay. It's not a very interesting plot point, in my opinion.
The thing about the whole foreshadowing of him being in the chair, like, they did that wrong, in my opinion. Like, they should have done it like, he's gonna end up in a chair, but he doesn't quite know how, and he has to discover how, and then you can bring up the fate question later, because then he'll be like, as he's trying to change it, he'll, maybe he starts to second guess himself. Like, what if I get these kids killed because I'm messing with this, because of something that happened before? And you use all that stuff you've been building towards to establish this sort of idea, this conflict, rather than just throwing you at the conflict right away, like, here it is, and then just like, and that's it. We're gonna roll with that. We're gonna drag this out for longer. There's no discovery process here. It feels very much like it's just kind of thrust at you from the get-go, isn't it?
Kind of. Also, I want to return to that whole idea of the privacy as well. Because, again, he really does just ask the computer, like, tell me everything you know about these people, and the computer is instantly able to respond to this, basically doxing these people. So, okay, here you are. It sets an interesting, idea of the Federation. Now, maybe this is simply just bad writing, or maybe he has some kind of super ultra special privilege thing. They did mention in the first episode, so you wouldn't know that he had some kind of ultra high security clearing thing, so maybe it's like, well, you're part of the elites now, I guess you can Google whoever you want. But
yeah,
it seems like it has wider implications. More like the comification of Star Trek again, which is something they have been trying for quite some time. There's this thing, right? Because I'm watching this and I'm thinking, like, okay, I mean, this is Star Trek-y in the broad strokes, as far as I understand Star Trek, but it's the execution that comes off as quite lacking. Like the fact that, okay, this language is a mathematical language. In fact, it is so utterly logical that a human who, granted, knows a lot about languages, but it's still just a human, can deduce the correct tone and pitch by simply looking at it. But the universal translators can't? Like, I don't understand exactly how they work. Maybe they have to hear the language to analyze it?
Possibly. Like, I would assume there's, because, I haven't gotten a good look at these devices. Are these kind of like tricorders? Like, what did they call them in the show?
Universal translators. I mean, they used them in the first episode where they just worked from the get-go. Like, there was never any, analyzing stage. They just used them and they worked. And even if it did have to hear them, The Rock talked to them later on.
Yeah, it did. So as soon as it began to communicate vocally, it should have been like, oh, okay, it's starting to translate,
Yeah.
So that's a good point. That's also a very good point, and a huge plot hole, actually.
It comes across as a poorly thought out idea where they're just like, well, we've got to present Uhura, somehow, because they made a deal out of pointing her out in the first episode, like, oh, you're the prodigy. Like, okay. So this is the important character, is it? Uh-huh. See, it comes across as really rushed.
See, Uhura's been a character in Star Trek, and she's like the comms officer, right? In the original show. And she's important, but I don't remember her being treated with such... Like, they seem to be doing something weird with the character. Like, they're propping her up much more than what she was ever in the other show, the original series.
I wouldn't be surprised if it's a little bit of prog thinking there, where they're like, oh, this is a black character. Wait, how did black characters exist back in the day? Are you telling us people just didn't actually give a shit about race back then? No, surely not. So we need to blow her up much grander than that again.
Yeah, that's the thing. And Star Trek, by the way, is one of the first shows, if I remember it historically, to actually air a interracial kiss, where I think Picard, or not Picard, fuck, kill me for saying that. Kirk kisses, I think Uhura or somebody, and that was a big deal because that had never been seen on television before. So it's not like, I don't know why they're trying to prop her up. Star Trek has never been a, what you would say, like a xenophobic show. It was always focused on the idea of humanity, and humanity going out there into the stars and exploring and learning new things and discovering new things and growing as a species and becoming, you know, better over time. So it's very almost regressivist, and as you call them, the progs, you know. Progs. What a terrible name. It sounds like frog.
It is intended to be.
Fair enough.
And this is also seen in Piker's story, where at first I'm kind of like, okay, he knows his fate, now he has to deal with it. Right, alright, that's something, but the more I think about that plotline, the less interested I am in it, because where could they take this that hasn't already been done? Because there's only really two conclusions. Either you can fight fate, or you can't fight fate.
Yeah, you raise a good point there. This is a story archetype that has been done almost to death by this point. And so I'm wondering what they're planning, because they have to, you would hope, have a plan to have some sort of unique twist, maybe turn it on its head somehow, to make it more something interesting other than you can or you can't.
I mean, you could take it through Piker's personal journey, but the problem is he's already decided. Like in episode 2, he's already talking to his number 2 sidekick, who he just picked up from a random space vessel, and I guess personnel transfers in the Federation are pretty damn simple, apparently. And he already tells her that, oh yeah, I know these people's name. I know the cadet's name. I've basically already decided to sacrifice myself for them, because that's just what I'm doing. And she's like, oh, that's really nice, but have you considered just maybe fixing this somehow instead? And it comes...
that's a good point. Like, he just accepts his fate and just like, okay, guess I'm gonna die then. And I get what they're going for. They're like, oh, look, he's a noble character. He's willing to lay down his life for others, you know? But the problem is he by accepting his fate, he's actually, what he's done and how he's accepted his fate is he's accepted defeat as the outcome, rather than trying to find a solution, which in Star Trek, it's all about finding a way to make it work, if you can, you know? It's all about overcoming obstacles, no matter how, ridiculous, no matter how, against the odds it is, you're facing an uphill battle, you're gonna figure out something, outwit the enemy, etc.
Alternatively, it's going to be a double fake, where he's going to be like, oh god, I've figured out the solution. And you're being like, oh my, he's saved. And then at the last moment, it'll be like, oh, but really, you actually just changed things. So you'd guarantee this would happen, and he's going to have to kill himself anyways, or cripple himself. Like, again, I don't know how many other ways you could possibly play this out, and...
yeah.
The problem is, once more, this is a plot point that is well known. This is a known entity that they can't really play with all that much. And it just becomes boring, and this is one of the primary focuses of the story at this point. To the point that we've now had an entire episode asking that question, like, is fate preordained? Here's evidence that maybe it is.
Yeah, it's posing the question, and he still kind of just accepted it. But I'm wondering, see, he accepted it right off the bat. That's the part that irks me, actually. The fact that he's like, yeah, I'm just gonna roll with this. You've got 10 years to figure out a solution, or to try to figure out some way to avoid it, you know? Are you really just gonna throw in the towel so easily? Like, what does that say as you as a character, as a captain? You're just gonna like, oh, you know, Spock's trapped on that asteroid. Well, I guess I can't change fate. Better leave him for dead, you know?
I also do hate how emasculated Spock is in this. Like, everybody yells at him. Like, nobody has any respect for him. And I get that this is a young Spock, etc., and so he doesn't have the gravitas, but I kind of hate how this is the standard now for every character. This is why I absolutely loathe the modern day James Bond, because he was introduced as a failure and a fuck up. That's why I hated the first movie, and I haven't watched any of the other ones, because I'm like, no, I'm not watching James Bond to watch him be shit at something. The entire point, the entire point of James Bond is that he's goddamn James Bond.
He's 007, the best of the best. You not the literal like, oh, it's a miracle he made it through this one again. It's like, wow. Like, it's just, you bring up James Bond. I've got such a bone to pick. Like, Daniel Craig, I don't know. I think he's been typecast, but the thing is, I'm not sure about his acting. But yeah, the new James Bonds are just, they're not good. I never liked him because it's just, he gets his, you know, his balls beat up in the first one. And then there's the whole like gay dude thing later where it's like he's hitting on a dude to try to get to know him. It's like, it's just weird.
It's weird. Like, it's not James Bond. It is not James Bond. And this is not Spock. This is not the gray eminence that is Spock. This kind of funny, almost sarcastic, like cold entity. Because Spock is actually a pretty cool character in that he is very outwardly human and also very obviously not human, and there's a great deal of struggle between the two there, like how he tries to be a little bit more human, how he tries to be more Vulcan, how he tries to figure things out. Like, it allows you to bounce things off him and get an interesting response. Like, okay, this is our emotional response, and Spock goes like, ah yes, but logic this, and you're going like, oh yeah, that does actually make sense. In this case, he's a joke. He walks up to Uhura and goes like, did you know that because our retard dude almost killed himself on the egg, your chances of success are higher? And she just have to look at him like, was that a pep talk?
Yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, Spock was always like the voice of reason and logic, right? He's very much, you know, because Vulcans in generally, they're very calculating. They're very detached from their emotional state because they separated themselves from their cousins, the Romulans, because they didn't want to be like that. And so it's one of those things where it's just like, where they just constantly take a character that's pre-established. We've seen this in other things like Halo and other shows, and they make fun of or light of that character to degrade that character so that they can use that degrading process to prop up another character. And over that other character. Like we saw that with you remember what was it, Thor? Like they made him fat. Remember that?
God, Thor.
They degrade him to prop up another character. This is a common trope that bad writers do. When they can't write good characters, the easiest thing to do is to make everyone else around this guy incompetent to prop up that character. Like happened in Mass Effect 3 with the assassin dude. Like, it's just how it is.
I feel like Uhura or whatever, she's the self-insert anti-fan character here. Now, she is a long-standing character, sure, but she's also the one that a prog might identify with the easiest as well, because she has all the defining hallmarks of an anti-fan character. She arrives on the scene, she is the new person, nobody knows them, and yet everybody loves them immediately. Everyone's so impressed. She's invited to dinner with the captain's like, my god, you're so smart. How did you get through the academy? And then she responds by saying, I basically don't care, I'm just amazing.
Yeah, that's pretty cringe when she said that.
Yeah, like she literally, why did you join Starfleet? Like, what are your, where do you see yourself in 10 years? And obviously, this is a question asked to someone in essentially a hierarchical organization. Like, where do you find yourself within Starfleet in 10 years? And she's like, well, you asking my life plans? No, she's asking about your career.
Yeah. And he has a right to ask those questions, too, because he's your captain, your commanding officer.
Yeah, and he assumes that you've joined Starfleet to be in Starfleet, and she's just like, no, I'm here on vacation.
Yeah, like, I hate to touch back to it, because I hate to bring it up, but communist infiltration of the Star Trek, like, IP or fandom has been a common thing, because they mistake Gene Roddenberry's vision of a utopia as a communist utopia, despite it being nothing alike it. In the slightest, because the whole focus of it is individual freedoms and personal liberties, the ability to choose one's own goals and paths and pursue those ambitions and dreams. For the idea of bettering humanity is another idea, and so it comes across as like, oh, you know, they're just using their emotions to get through, like, oh, you know, I just feel my way through life and I just get through the academy, you know, the most prestigious academy, and it's not like it's difficult to get into Starfleet Academy. And I honestly think it ruins Uhura's character as well. Like, now she just seems kind of like weak and lame and lazy. She lays her way through it, and she has better talent. Like, come on, show. Like, throw the character a bone. Like, making her dedicated and work hard makes her a much more endearing character because she earned that position, rather than her Mary Sue-ness just carried her, you know?
Yeah, it does seem to lessen her, especially also as the entire plotline seems to be delivered to her. It seems a strange direction to take the character in, not necessarily too fond of it.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting how they introduce other characters in the show, and let me just say, the other characters, like the cast of the crew of the ship, like Captain Picard, like the hairdo, he's not, the way he presents himself as a leader is not very good. Like when confronted with the situation with the zealots, he is not very level-headed.
He comes across as a bit feckless.
Yes, he doesn't come across as a good captain in the slightest. Like, and the security officer, I'm a strong, independent whammon. It's like, okay, what's your personality? I'm strong independent
whammon, yes.
Okay, all right. I mean, that's, like, we had characters like Worf and other interesting security chiefs before, but you're just gonna be that character. Okay. Then you have the pilot, I assume that was the pilot, the lesbian with a weird haircut.
Mm-hmm.
And her dimension is immediately, I'm a lesbian, and I think she's dating the chief of medical, right?
It's like, I dress like a boy. Yes, we know.
Yes, we get it. You're a stereotype. Thank you. Please go away.
Move along.
Oh my goodness. The crew is not very impressive. The acting and actors and actresses, like, it just doesn't have the magic, because the older shows, like the acting, the actors they had, the guys who were like Quark and stuff, you know, they were so much more lively, so much more heart and soul in their performances. This kind of felt a little on the stiff side, especially when it came to the pilot and the chief of security. Those two in particular, like, they are dry.
Well, again, female security officer, her entire thing is literally just being the strong female character, which is the most boring character trait in science fiction and history, just fiction in general, just straight up. It is not a very interesting character. The rest of the crew, we haven't seen enough of them for me to really begin judging. I do like Picard. I feel like he has a certain amount of on-screen presence, even if today he was not very interesting. I mean, his big grand plan to save the ship from being attacked by the Zealots is steering towards the asteroid so they won't shoot. I'm like, that is the most obvious plan in the history of plans. And everyone's on the bridge is like, oh my god, Captain, they stopped firing. I don't understand why. Could it have something to do with the enormous church in front of us?
It's like, yeah, basically. They have already confessed their weakness. Which I do want to point out that the antagonists, like, they just tell them their weakness right off the bat. They're like, we worship rock thing in space. Don't hurt
Yet
rock
another
thing.
little plot point, too, is rock in space has force fields and easily shrugged off the Federation's weapons to begin with. Why do we assume that rock in space's magic force fields can't shrug off the weapons of the Zealots?
Yeah, which have a technologically superior ship with better weapons platforms.
And the
Which
Zealots...
we've established.
Well, better weapon platform. They don't hit a single... They miss
That's
the...
also true!
They miss the
they
Enterprise more than they hit.
That's true, they fire... What were they firing? Torpedoes? Or
Torpedoes.
Like some sort of... Torpedoes with no guidance. Hold on, rewind a little bit here. They're supposedly better than the Federation's military technology.
Yep, they're
Yet
faster, they got better guns.
For some reason, their torpedoes don't have any sort of homing capabilities.
Yep. Meanwhile, the Enterprise fires one beam at it, and
one
hits.
phaser bank.
There appears to be no shield, no defenses.
Yeah,
it
strikes right through and cripples their ship. It's like, that bought us some time. It's like, dude, you haven't even like been returning fire. You just ordered your weapons officer to return fire, and it did a significant amount of damage to the enemy vessel, enough to stun them. So clearly, like, they're like, oh, we can't possibly fight them. Yet at the same time, one single blast from our phaser bank can just incapacitate them for a couple of minutes. Like, okay, now lay into them with some like photon torpedoes and, just another couple salvos from the phasers. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing?
The more
They'll be
and
begging
more,
for surrender.
the more and more I think of this episode, the less and less sense it makes. The more and more plot holes begin emerging.
It's like, they're technologically superior, sir, says the fucking lady on the deck, where she's like looking at the ship, the statistics. Either she needs to get fired immediately, or something's not right here.
Hold on, weapons officer. I thought you said they had big guns. Well, see, a lot of this is too just like the pacing of any action show where they're, oh, we can't take another hit, sir. Takes another 17 on the way towards the planet.
That's true. That's true. During the asteroid scene, they're like, oh, our shields are down to 40%, Captain. If we take another hit, we're gonna explode.
They're lining up a kill shot. Gets hit 5 seconds later. That wasn't it.
It's like, don't worry, that's not the real kill shot. And nor that one, or that one. It's like, okay.
Like, give them some time. They need to aim, okay?
Listen, we need the camera to shake on the bridge. Oh god, the bridge. The bridge design. I hate the bridge design. It's terrible. It's way too bright. And why are there lights on the bridge that shine at the crew, like into their eyesight? No wonder why they had a problem. No wonder why the weapons officer probably thought their ship was superior. She couldn't see her console. She's like, I think that I can't really see, the glare is too bright.
Sir, I can't see my instrumentation from all the glare. Okay, best guess then. Dangerous.
Oh my god. Oh. At least it was funny, but in a bad way. Oh god.
Yeah.
The show's not particularly striking all the right beats, is it? It's not looking so good.
I think it is at least trying in its own way. Like, in comparison, this is still, in my opinion, more Trek than STD or Picard.
Yep, I will agree with that, because I've seen a little bit of those, and those are horrendous.
But I'm still not convinced that it's good.
Yeah, it's doing the things that you would want a Star Trek show to do. It's got lots of big questions it's trying to ask. Problem is it's doing it in a very, like, 2-year-old fashion, fumbling through them. it has the conflict, between different races and stuff happening. And I do hope that they see. I do want to point out that in the older shows, like The Next Generation, it took 2 seasons for that show to find its footing. Because the first 2 seasons are kind of pain to watch, and then they're like, okay, they kind of figure it out, and the show starts getting good. And also, you could probably just skip those 2 seasons. You wouldn't be missing all that much, to be honest. I feel like, if given time, maybe, if the writers are receptive, which again I doubt, I want to point out, that there's a possibility they could figure it out and find their footing.
Oh, good. So we just have to watch, 2 seasons of this.
2 seasons, yeah.
Good.
But the thing is, TNG figured out how to find its footing before. Why can't they just take the lessons of what came before and build on top of that? Why are we starting all over from ground zero? That's no excuse, in my opinion. Even so, and there's still too many flaws with the show, by the way. The fucking lighting, the outfits, the terrible outfits, the makeup. I won't say the makeup was actually not bad, decent job. The special effects, it's generic, CGI. I kind of miss the days where they'd had models, and they'd blow them up. That was kind of neato Cheeto.
Well, you don't get that anymore. It's verboten.
Verboten. That's okay. Even TNG and DS9, they did CGI. And don't worry, one day we will get Arch to watch a good Star Trek show. For some reason, he's elected to watch the bad ones.
This is a good Star Trek show.
Oh, don't you even.
I have decided.
Actually, I like this show a lot. I like Piker's hair and how froofed up it is.
It is very floofed up. It is enjoyable to watch. In fact, I would kind of like to move Piker's mouth up to his hair and just have it speak for him.
Oh my god. Yeah, I found myself this episode when I saw Piker. I looked at his face and then I looked at his hair. And every time I see him, I just look at his hair. That's a reoccurring problem, not with just this character, that lesbian chick. I'm looking at her hair that's just it looks like somebody smeared hair paste on her head. Or
her hair looks like a ski jumping hill. That's what it looks like.
It kinda does. It's just that's weird. Why is that a style and a fashion thing?
Well, and that's the problem too. Her fashion is just modern day lesbo fashion, basically.
Yes.
It's isn't this lesbian. The future? Shouldn't you be wearing some kind of future gay stuff, Yeah,
how about just, have a normal hairdo and, be a normal person and then, be gay or whatever on the side. Just be a person. Why does the gay part have to be your sole singular character, identity piece?
The problem is, she's an officer woman from the future that dresses like she's from today. That's just weird.
And goddamn, today's hairstyles are atrocious. Seeing them being implemented into shows right now, people are gonna look back and they're gonna be they're gonna look back at our era and be like, God, this was just the era of just cringe and garbage, wasn't it? Just look at all the terrible fashion sense. Oh, the hairstyles. They're terrible. Piker's big, froofed up hair. It should have a mouth of its own. Probably does. Might even get its own episode, honestly.
Your bigotry will not go unpunished. I still quite like Piker. He's the best character so far.
I mean, I'm not going to argue with you. Piker is the only character in the show that I was while his command is questionable at times under duress, just because of how... What's the word, Archery? Churlish he seems?
Churlish?
Yeah, he seems very... Barchian.
That's not the word I would choose to describe him.
Okay, what would be the Barchian word you'd use?
Frivolous.
Frivolous? That's not very Barchian, though.
Yeah, but he's not childish. He's far more frivolous. Even when he's getting shot at by the space fanatics, he's just wow, we got shot at. Where did that come from? See,
I can't believe that.
What he should immediately have done is pull out a sidearm and shoot the censor officer for incompetence. Somebody take that person's place.
Oh my god. This show might have a redeeming arc if they do the alternate universe. Because in the Star Trek universe, there's a other universe where the Federation is an empire instead.
I know. It's called Star Trek Discovery.
That's not what I'm talking about.
But it's what I'm talking about.
It's the universe where everyone's evil, and it's kind of cool.
Yes, in fact, I preferred that. It was a way cooler universe. Although the costumes were pretty stupid.
Where it's like the Earth hegemony or something, and they're like, yes, we do backstab the ever-living shit out of each other, and we do think that all Xenos are sub-sentient life form slaves. It's like, damn.
But to wrap up the thoughts on this episode, it's still got the ingredients of Trek, just like the first episode, but it doesn't manage to put them together in a really satisfying way. And the closer you look, the more you see the rents in the story, the more you begin to see the holes and the patches and the places where they simply put things in for convenience rather than logic.
Yeah. And that's unfortunate, because you'd think in today's, oh man, like if you had told me as a kid, like things are gonna get better, they're gonna get great, you know, these shows are gonna have cool scenes and their budgets are gonna be great with all this cool CGI and special effects, and we have all these special effects and all these big budget, and it's all improperly used. Terrible set pieces, not very good character design, and god, the outfits and costumes are garbage.
We shall see in the next episode, but, well, it's better than Halo. I'll give it that much.
That's true also. Better than Halo by a long shot.